In the year 2000, development was underway for Kingdom Hearts, an action RPG for the brand new PlayStation 2. Square and Disney had neighboring offices over in Meguro, Tokyo, so they took opportunity of their close proximity to co-produce the game. It was pitched as Square's Mario 64, something that could match or even surpass Nintendo's platformer, aided by the iconography of Disney's brand. By 2002, the game was finished and launched successfully, becoming one of the PS2's top-selling games of all time. Later that year, Square re-released the game in Japan with additional material, including a secret ending that teased a sequel. In 2003, Square actually announced the development of two sequels, the very direct Kingdom Hearts 2 and the handheld iteration Chain of Memories. Both games would continue from the first as new episodes in a larger storyline, initiating Kingdom Hearts as an all-out game franchise. Once the two games had released, Kingdom Hearts had become a series with a certain identity, a series of characteristics beyond the surface of Final Fantasy cross Disney. And, simply because he's the director, much of its identity is attributed to Tetsuya Nomura and his silly writing style. Tetsuya Nomura did not write Kingdom Hearts. The story for the very first game was written by a team of 3, led by anime writer Keiko Nobumoto. The writers she supervised, Akiyama Watanabe and Nojima, each also wrote for Chain of Memories and 2 to varying extents. There's an overall consistent team of developers, core staff members who have stuck to the series, but there's naturally going to be fluctuation between projects. Nobumoto never returned to the series after the first game, for example. Following the release of Kingdom Hearts 2, this team's focus shifted for the first time to other projects. Though an inevitable Kingdom Hearts 3 was all but confirmed, the series would be taking a bit of a break. Alongside the reveal of Final Fantasy XIII at E3 2006, Square Enix unleashed a trailer for
Final Fantasy Versus 13,
an action-heavy sister game.
Versus 13
was handed to the Kingdom Hearts team for development, and for the next, 5 years, they were hard at work on it. As a result, Kingdom Hearts was effectively on standby. The team was just too busy with this other project. But hey, Chain of Memories was shared with another studio. Maybe, while all this HD PS3 nonsense was going on in the front, another handheld game wouldn't hurt. It's just a little one. I have been struggling to think of what to say about Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. This isn't because I find it bland or unremarkable, it's the total opposite. This game easily affected me the most out of any Kingdom Hearts game so far, and trying to figure out exactly how to put my feelings into words has been way more challenging for me than I ever expected. I played the game last July. I've spent all this time drafting and redrafting attempts to discuss it and its strange temporal position in the series, and I'm still not sure if I'm ready. It's October. From the outside, on the surface, 358 Days Over 2 seems inconsequential and dinky, but the background surrounding it is dense. Kingdom Hearts 2 wrapped up development 4 years prior to Days, and in that time, my goodness.
Take a look at Final Fantasy XIII on PlayStation 3, which will become available in multiple versions, including Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy Versus 13.
2 released at the precise point in time where Sony was going all in on the PS3, and Square Enix were right there with them to boast with a Final Fantasy VII tech demo and the aforementioned Final Fantasy XIII. The console industry was expecting a shift in priorities, a transition so dramatic that companies like Square Enix could only sort of keep up. This rapid progression led to a slump of sorts. A lot of Japanese studios generally not being able to keep up with rising development costs and retreating to smaller handheld projects. On one hand, you had the PSP rivaling the standards of the PS2, and on the other hand, the DS was bursting with games that were accessible, affordable, and profitable. The DS was marketed in a way Satoru Iwata directly compared to this Mother 2 ad, for children, adults, and older sisters. It broadened demographics and got so huge you got games like Professor Layton making use of the same tactics, Level 5 manufacturing a series of easygoing narrative puzzle games with back covers straight out of magazines. I mean, easygoing up to a certain point. I promise I'm done talking about Layton. In essence, The DS was a no-brain trainer for many companies to develop for, Square Enix included. Even if Final Fantasy XIII was a priority, they still made time for Dragon Quest remakes and Final Fantasy remakes and Snoopy DS and Mario Hoops 3 on 3, am I reading this right? They even put out a fully original RPG for the platform led by the artists from the Kingdom Hearts team and co-developed by our buddies at Jupiter.
The world ends with you.
I really wanted to talk to you about this game today, but the touch-heavy control scheme makes it difficult to capture footage for. It is a pretty important moment for the Kingdom Hearts team though, as it's their first fully original, fully new game that doesn't borrow characters from other series. And, as The World Ends With You was being developed, other members of the team split to make Dissidia Final Fantasy, which is where 358 Days Over 2 originates. According to Nomura, Dissidia started life as a Kingdom Hearts project before pivoting, and it is probably because Disney wasn't about to let them make a fighting game where Tifa beats up Scrooge McDuck. Though Dissidia branched out to be its own thing, the multiplayer battle concept stuck as a novel idea for a new Kingdom Hearts on DS.
We made a game where characters from various Final Fantasy games got together to battle Dissidia, but that was a project we were originally thinking of using for Kingdom Hearts. This time, we thought that it would be difficult to bring out Disney characters and have them fight each other in multiplayer. And wondering what to do, we arrived at the idea of using Organization 13.
Nomura has this very loose way of talking about the development process, but yes, this one is about the morally dubious Organization 13. It's their game this time. Maybe they work mechanically, as Nomura said, but as usual, they also work as a cast of eye-catching otome pretty men. If we consider the Mother 2 mindset, this may genuinely be the most DS-ish trait of it all. Why, yes, I am interested in a game about this dubious band of bad boys. I also like to write about them kissing on the internet. Why do you ask? This time around, we won't have to worry so much about the other half of this multimedia venture, Disney. Their influence on 358 Days Over 2 is nothing new, but they did endure some nonsense as Kingdom Hearts 2 launched in 2005. If you can believe it, was out. The slump of the early ooze resulted in some major structural changes for the company, from big dumb stuff like their enormous Pixar acquisition to the littler but still weird choice to rename Disney Interactive to Buena Vista Games for a few years. This is all following their sort of crisis of maturity, of trying to seem like a more mature multimedia company rather than the guys that made Aladdin. Amongst all these changes, the one with the most repercussions was the departure of his role as CEO being filled by the ghoulish waste of air in 2005. I'm kidding. They're both wastes of air. You may know this freak for his leadership at ABC, the television network owned by Disney, where he greenlit America's Funniest Home Videos and cancelled Twin Peaks before it could reach its own conclusion. As all kinds of things were happening in the first half of the decade, there was also a shift in staff at Disney Interactive Japan, the division whose boss got Kingdom Hearts off the ground in the first place. If you saw my very first Kingdom Hearts video, please don't watch it, you may remember I mentioned Shuji Utsumi. He had a key role in making the game happen to begin with, as in he was the president of this division and literally went up to in 2000 to ask if the game could be made.
まあ、あれだからそれはね、OK、頑張れよって一言ですよね。それアピールとある。
For whatever reason, I'd previously dismissed the significance of Utsumi in particular. Like, okay, he's just some guy from Disney, right? He was undeniably crucial to the existence of Kingdom Hearts, but he's just some business guy. Following the release of Kingdom Hearts, Shuji Utsumi founded Q Entertainment with Tetsuya Mizuguchi, and the studio developed the PSP launch title Lumines. Yeah, so a lot of the folks at Sega decided to split after the company merged with Sammy, somewhat parallel to Square's own merger with Enix the same year. Q was comprised of a lot of the same folks who worked on Sega's Rez, among other Dreamcast games, and Utsumi himself had worked on several of them. Yeah, he was only at Disney for a few years, he just happened to be there for Kingdom Hearts. It's a wild coincidence. While indirect, the PSP does somewhat feel like a successor to the WonderSwan in spirit, and Lumines is kind of what seals that to me. Bandai went and published this brand new puzzle game from a brand new studio and put it out as a launch title for the handheld even. They published more of Q's games afterwards, including 2 refurbished versions of Gunpei, the best game ever made, and the Masahiro Sakurai joint Meteos. For some reason, Meteos later got a Disney variant, presumably just because Utsumi used to work at Disney Interactive and knew some guys there. What this means though is that in some ways the first Kingdom Hearts game on DS was not 358 Days Over 2, but Meteos Disney Magic by Q Entertainment. Also, Shuji Utsumi is president of Sega now. Kingdom Hearts is retroactively a Sonic game in some ways. You see why this was hard to put together, right?
Salaryman's curse.
So during the development of 358 Days Over 2, the biggest, newest, hottest trend in games, particularly portable games, was Capcom's Monster Hunter. Following a PSP iteration in 2005 which allowed for easy multiplayer, the game exploded. Imitators soon followed, and 358 Days Over 2 was legitimately one of them. It's entirely probable that the project began with the idea to make something multiplayer, because of the rise in nationwide monster hunting. It's almost impossible that this isn't the case, honestly. As with anything that gets big, the Monster Hunter formula was cloned in stuff like God Eater for PSP and Kaiju Busters for DS. 358 Days Over 2 is just another to follow this trend, but it takes Monster Hunter's repetitive mission routine and weaves it into its narrative. The structure of Monster Hunter, the pile of long missions that task you with conquering foul beasts through long-winded processes, is recontextualized as a job you have to work because there's nothing else you can do. It serves as a firm basis for the multiplayer, but in the main game, it's a grueling 9 to 5. So, of course, who better for the role than Roxas?
What's going on?
358 Days Over 2 is a Roxas game, and it's entirely because he suits this kind of soul-crushing minimum wage stuff. If you weren't following previously, there's a year-long gap between the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, Roxas's retroactive birth, and the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2, when Roxas returns to Sora's heart and stuff. This game fills that gap, letting us see what Roxas got up to as Sora was venturing into Castle Oblivion and getting dumped in the memory egg. As alluded to last time, Roxas was serving as a member of Organization 13 before getting captured and added to Ansem's virtual copy of Twilight Town. That infamous sequence, where Roxas is just hanging out with his pals on summer break day by day, is where the pieces come together for 358 Days Over 2. The pure mundanity distilled in this ballsy opening sequence is just how Roxas lives. When we play from his perspective, we're taking it one day at a time. I mean, geez, his most prominent pastime in 2 and in Days is sitting atop a clock tower with his friends. I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. It isn't lost on me why this sequence struck me so hard or why Days follows in the same footsteps. If I may be so personal, Roxas thoroughly represents the desire to belong and have a place. It feels like someone at Square, Nomura or not, conjured up the image of some kids sitting on a ledge together with ice cream and teared up. That's a snapshot you can't just manufacture, but it's revisited again and again and again because it's all Roxas wants. If only things could stay this way, etc. But we already know that they don't. Roxas cannot exist at the same time as Sora, and Sora is our hero, so only Sora can persist. Roxas is just a copycat. He'd never be a real Keyblade boy. Nothing about him is real. You get me? Young people like Roxas are always being manipulated and discarded by those in power. This isn't some pressing, urgent, modern statement necessarily, but an intergenerational theme that spans back to the media that preceded and influenced stuff like Kingdom Hearts. This series is constantly repeating itself. Obsessed with revisiting the same events every time. Even Kingdom Hearts 2, a game with the most new stuff so far, has the end goal of Sora simply returning home with his friends where he feels safest. Familiarity and memory are common themes, for whatever reason. So having a game where the main character is barely gripping onto reality and remembers nothing is pretty out there, huh?
That is not the hero.
A wrench was thrown in my whole understanding of Roxas earlier this year when I replayed Final Fantasy VII. It felt new, almost like this was the real playthrough after my first time 5 years ago when I impatiently ran through the whole thing, cheating over and over without learning its mechanics. Knowing now what Final Fantasy VII is about and knowing that it closely preceded the original Kingdom Hearts, it really feels to me like a thematic groundwork for Kingdom Hearts' depiction of memory and, importantly, identity. The twist of Cloud Strife's whole deal is that he is only living in the shadow of Zack. In a setting where boys like Cloud got shoveled into the Shinra military, the expectations of how he must act as a tool of the company stick with him until he ultimately overcomes them. Like, he acts all stoic and independent as a persona to hide behind until the real Cloud comes pouring out. And yes, it is because Aerith made her wear a dress. Cloud is simply one of many identity crisis protagonists, a trope that was very much in vogue during Final Fantasy VII's development and even earlier, following in the footsteps of Camille, who followed in the footsteps of Amuro. Sora is almost another one of this kind of accidental protagonist, getting the Keyblade shoved upon him by powers beyond comprehension. But he's such a white toast plain boy that there's no conflict in him being the one. In this case, Sora gets to be Zack. The one who really fumbles is Roxas, a supposedly empty shell mimicking the real hero before him. Kingdom Hearts 2 sort of uses Roxas to explain what a nobody is and bring a mature twang to the storyline, essentially to let Sora in turn grow up a little bit. Days, on the other hand, offers an origin story for this otherwise mysterious character, fleshing out his relationship with the organization. And check this out, he's also shoved into combat and used as a tool, just like Cloud, just like Camille. He knows nothing about the world, but he can sure get exploited for labor by a powerful entity because he knows how to use this specific tool. He is useful, even if he's just a cheap knockoff of the real thing. When we first saw these organization guys in Chain of Memories, they had no voices. It was a Game Boy Advance game, but then Kingdom Hearts 2 introduced the rest, and they got to have voices because it was a PS2 game. One thing I haven't really done so far is look into the voice cast, and particularly the Japanese voice cast, but it explains a lot about what may have influenced this arc of the series. Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix was bundled with Chain of Memories, a remake that kind of blows chunks, but gave voices to the remaining organization members. This is a pretty big deal, a main feature of this release alongside simply freeing this part of the story from the Game Boy Advance, so the casting certainly matters, right? It's a big feature. It's Char Aznavour again. One of the main things I realized about Professor Layton when I talked about that series was the ballsy attitude Level 5 had to just mimic concepts from other works, including those the developers most likely grew up around. The whole game concept was born from Akihiro Hino remembering puzzle books he had as a kid and going, damn, we should make a game out of that, but just kind of make it like Ace Attorney, as a cheap way to get his company into self-publishing after working for Sony and Square Enix. More and more Layton games got made, and through lightweight storytelling, a lot of concepts were influenced quite directly from things like Castle in the Sky or Star Wars or Mobile Suit Gundam. Jean Descalais, the series' part-time villain, was molded in the shape of Char Aznavour. I don't think anyone in Kingdom Hearts is a Char clone in the same way, but I do think the choice to cast Shuichi Ikeda, Char's long-standing voice actor, as the one-off villain Marluxia is probably inspired. After all, his voice has been used to sell games in the past, like D3 Publishers' simple series duology, The Sniper.
あと3人でこの復讐も終わりだ。 この復讐は何のためだ？正義のため。
Sniper duology.
この頃はそんな気持ちもなくなった。
Chain of Memories does something very similar. The voice acting carries this remake, justifies its very existence really, so the casting is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Really, it lets me go off about how the devs at Square probably know what Gundam is, instead of only supposing that they could know. It is proof, but I was gonna harp about the similarities between Roxas and Camille anyway. Kingdom Hearts, like Professor Layton, like anything, I guess, is inspired by popular concepts that have been well established by things like Gundam, even after Square already tackled the whole Camille concept in a far more straightforward manner in Final Fantasy VII.
Here's the World War I flying ace standing out under the stars. It's a beautiful night. Somewhere off in the distance is the low rumble of artillery fire. As he looks at the sky, he thinks of the people at home and wonders if they're looking at the same sky. And then he is sad. Slowly, he walks back across the darkened aerodrome, and then the thought that throbs so constantly in his mind cries out.
Wow, I am so glad that Brock the Archivist is subscribed to the highest tier at patreon.com/smudgeadept.
So here's my crackpot Kingdom Hearts conspiracy theory. Suppose Nomura is, like a lot of people, a fan of Gundam, and during the late development of Kingdom Hearts 2, he went and saw the Zeta Gundam compilation movies released that year. These movies revive Zeta Gundam a little after its original run 20 years prior, refreshing its story and characters in his mind. A naive but skilled Gundam pilot and new type, Camille Bidan, and a morally dubious but experienced fiend to guide him, Quattro Bagino. The dynamic of these two sticks in the back of his mind as he oversees the casting of Shuichi Ikeda for Rechain and then writes 358 Days Over 2. All of it.
In this game, did you write much of the scenario yourself?
I arranged the main parts of the scenario, and referencing the plot that Kanamaki-san had put together, I wrote everything from start to finish. For 2 weeks I didn't see anyone, hid in canned food, and wrote the whole time.
He makes it about the naive but skilled Keyblade wielder and nobody, Roxas, and a morally dubious but experienced fiend to guide him, Axel. 358 Days Over 2 feels overwhelmingly like an extension of Zeta Gundam. Given its Monster Hunter format, this game is structured in a pretty unusual way for Kingdom Hearts. Everything progresses day by day, in line with how 2 began, but stretched across 358 entire days. You might have been wondering this entire time where the Over 2 part of the title comes from, and the reason is revealed pretty early on.
A memory of a memory.
Xion is an artificial being created by the organization to be a perfect Keyblade wielder, to siphon Roxas's new type style abilities and prolong Sora's big sleep. She doesn't know that she's this capsule of bad memories, and that her existence is, in essence, messing up Sora's year-long nap. Poor her, right? This is where the conflict of the game comes in. Like, aside from Roxas's whole identity thing. Because she's unknowingly stealing Sora's memories, Riku seeks her out so his best friend can rest easy, but the organization wants to keep her around. She is useful to them. With the Zeta Gundam comparison going on, I could probably compare her to Murasame 4 as an engineered soldier of the lab, but Xion's whole thing is that she exists parallel to Roxas, something of an extension of Sora rather than a byproduct. The form she takes is dependent on whoever's looking at her, so while Roxas sees the distantly familiar face of Kairi, the members of the organization view her as a perfect copy of Roxas, suited for battle. The perfect copy they see is also evidently someone they recognize from the past, based on Zigbar's reaction here at least. It seems like whatever form Xion takes, she's gonna be familiar somehow, owing to her origin as a cluster of memories leaking out from that big egg. Xion was introduced as a catalyst for all sorts of drama within this one game, but she is accidentally, intentionally, the embodiment of a bunch of the series' themes. Like, memories are a recurring motif, obviously, but this game shoves in your face that Sora cannot exist without them. You want to talk about Nomura writing, he's just out here turning character traits into separate abstract entities. I'd do it too if I was working with Disney material the whole time. The Disney locales do return here, your missions take place across a bunch of them. And even if the tone is off, it complements all the primary story stuff. They're familiar, generally, whether you know them from other Kingdom Hearts games or if you know them from Disney's own movies. From the beginning, the Disney worlds have worked as youthful backdrops, but they stand out within the rest of 358 Days Over 2's cold storyline. By the end of the game, I end up kind of hating Sora as the status quo everyone is fighting to return to. Xion and Roxas aren't allowed to exist on their own because they gotta cling to Sora's heart, they gotta return his memories to him, they gotta stick with him forever because this is a game about Disney. These memories that are so important that they rip up anyone trying to exist alongside them. Sora gets to reunite with his friends and gets to return home at the end of 2 while Roxas, what, returns to his heart? What? All Roxas ever needed is a good set of friends to sit and eat ice cream with, but Mickey goddamn Mouse just has to rip that away from him, to put him back in the egg so his perfect Keyblade soldier can keep fighting for the sanctity of a freak who died 100 years ago. Sora didn't ask to be the most important little boy in the universe, I guess, but are we even meant to relate to him beyond here? Roxas is left with the damn scraps, barely getting by in the shadow of the boy everyone wants him to be. He doesn't even know anything. King Mickey's all-important regime crushes this boy's identity and squishes him back into the Sora-shaped hole. That sun's always gonna be setting, the same as it ever was. At least his fake virtual summer vacation was nice. Given that this game was, according to Tetsuya Nomura, entirely written by Tetsuya Nomura, I feel that it's fair to say that this is the most truthful to the core of the series. Naturally, it was ironed out by two other writers, Kingdom Hearts 2 planner Yukari Ishida and the author of the Kingdom Hearts light novels, Tomoko Kanemaki. But this was the very first, and importantly only, instance of Nomura taking on writing duties himself. This may well be because the rest of the team were already working on
Final Fantasy Versus 13.
A project so intensive that days needed to be tossed over to the support studio Hand for development. You may know them for co-developing the Centennial Case, the DS port of Flower, Sun and Rain, and Level 5's Fantasy Life. I'm tempted to say that 358 Days Over 2 is indulgent and reflects only the deepest ambition from our one and only author and creative voice, but he seemed to find it pretty tiring. After all, Nomura is not an experienced writer, on this scale at least.
This was the first time I'd done it. This time I thought, why don't I try to write this myself? And, as you might expect, it was tiresome. When I finished writing, I said, I never want to do this again.
What, to you, were the most significant lines and days?
Roxas's very last words, I guess.
Only 7 days to go, and my summer vacation is over. He wasn't lying. This melancholy hangs over Roxas's whole character. 358 Days Over 2 is thoroughly an extension of the emotions in Roxas's ballsy opening sequence, of disorientation, of being manipulated, of doubting your place in the world. But overall it has this air of reluctance, or just a certain type of grief being expressed through Roxas. The crushing nature of his dead-end existence is embedded into the gameplay, providing harmony with the story, but this also means it's a massive contrast with 2. It's not a game about a kid on an adventure, it's a game about a salaryman. Monster Hunter appealed to people because it has this busybody nature. Its repetitive processes make for easy handheld play. Days expects you to approach it like a Monster Hunter, but I didn't know this when I played it last year. I found it difficult in the tedious way, and similarly to Chain, I really should not have played it all sitting at a desk for 3 to 4 hour sessions every day. This might be a problem going forward. I still have like 3 more handheld games to talk about. Contained in Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix was a new secret ending, quite similar to how Another Side, Another Story was hidden in the first game. The original release of 2 also had its own secret scene. 2 always had this included in every version, but Final Mix only expands on the details, introducing new mysterious characters alongside Roxas? But I mean, obviously none of this teases Days. Days is just a stepping stone towards whatever this is. Could this be Kingdom Hearts 3? Is this even Roxas? Why is this man wrinkly? How many more stepping stones will there be before whatever this is? Is Kingdom Hearts gonna keep people asking questions?